Coming up on First at 4, the Supreme Court has restored Donald Trump to 2024 presidential primary ballots. And one county holds a memorial to honor those who died from COVID nearly 4 years after the first case in Kentucky.
Plus, rain chances are back for most of this week. Those details on the way as Mountain News First at 4 starts now.
Dedicated to Eastern and Southern Kentucky, this is WYMT Mountain News First at 4.
Good afternoon, I'm Steve Hensley. First at 4, the U.S. Supreme Court has unanimously ruled former President Donald Trump will stay on the ballots of all 50 states. The High Court rejected an attempt by Colorado to disqualify the former president because of his actions on January 6th. CBS's Nicole Skanga is outside the Supreme Court with more on this legal win for the GOP frontrunner on the eve of Super Tuesday.
Thank you very much.
Former President Donald Trump is praising the Supreme Court for its unanimous decision to restore his name to all 2024 presidential primary ballots.
I think it will go a long way toward bringing our country together.
Voters in Colorado had tried to remove Trump from their state's ballot. They argued an insurrection clause in the Constitution's 14th Amendment disqualified him from holding office because of his attempts to undo his 2020 election loss, culminating in the January 6th attack on the Capitol. But Monday, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled only Congress can decide how and when this constitutional provision is implemented.
And the rationale here really is we don't want states to be able to do this. You heard the justices coalesce around the idea that we're very worried states could do it alone, create this kind of patchwork when it comes to federal elections.
Today's decision leaves open the possibility that Congress could refuse to certify the election of a candidate who participated in insurrection. The court also sidestepped the issue of insurrection altogether.
The Supreme Court's decision today did not exonerate him. They did not say that January 6th wasn't an insurrection, and they did not say that he didn't engage in insurrection.
The Supreme Court has agreed to weigh in on whether Trump can be tried criminally for his actions on January 6th. Next month, the court will hear arguments about whether Trump is entitled to broad immunity from prosecution from acts allegedly committed while in office. Nicole Skanga, CBS News, Washington.
Well, tomorrow is the biggest day of this year's primary campaign so far, as 16 states vote in contests known as Super Tuesday. The elections are a crucial moment for President Joe Biden and Donald Trump, who are the overwhelming frontrunners for the Democratic and Republican presidential nominations, respectively. So how would the two fare against one another today in a hypothetical matchup? CBS News' Director of Elections and Surveys, Anthony Salvanto, takes a look.
Donald Trump with a national lead in voter preference over Joe Biden. This is actually Donald Trump's largest lead in our polling to date. What's behind it? Well, let's start with the economy, which is, of course, the #1 issue. The economy's views have been improving. So why isn't that helping Joe Biden right now? Well, it's the comparison that voters are making. When we ask people to look back on how they remember the economy under Donald Trump, we get 2/3 who say they remember it as being good. You compare that to how people rate the economy now, and yes, even though things have been improving, it's still quite a gap. So in some ways, the Biden campaign is running against that memory, that perception. And finally, this, as we head into not just Super Tuesday, but State of the Union. Who has a vision for the country? It's important because in uncertain times, even if people don't rate things as good now, which they don't, voters want to know where things are headed. Well, Donald Trump has an advantage over Joe Biden on that. Do they have a vision for the country? And so this is a number right here after enduring State of the Union that we're going to watch and see how that plays out going forward. And that's the latest breakdown from the CBS News poll.
We are tracking some sunny and warm weather across the region as we kick off this work week, and be sure to enjoy that because we are tracking some rain chances as early as tomorrow. But this afternoon, let's take a live look from Perry County, from Buffalo Mountain. You can see plenty of blue sky and sunshine back in the distance, and that current temperature is sitting at 73 degrees up on First Alert Pinpoint Doppler. All thanks to high pressure. A really nice afternoon continues across our region, and check out these current readings. Some of us knocking on 80's door at this hour, up to 77 for Jackson, Manchester, Somerset, also Irvin and Monticello. So we are well above average on this Monday, up to 73 in Hazard and 74 in Pikeville, 75 over in London at this hour. If you have those plans to fire up the grill this evening, the forecast could not be better. Temperatures back in the middle to upper 60s as we stay dry. Also partly cloudy, but again, those rain chances are set to increase as early as tomorrow. All those details coming up in just a few minutes. Steve?
All right, Cameron, thank you. It's been almost 4 years now since the first COVID-19 case in Kentucky. Today, people in Boyle County came together to remember. WYMT's Phil Pendleton has more on what people said in looking back on the numerous losses.
Constitution Square is where Kentucky's government began many years ago, and it was here where people came together to mark a moment in time, a period of time that began 4 years ago, and also to honor the lives that were lost during that time. COVID-19 reared its ugly head in Boyle County, and the virus caused its most devastating impacts towards the fall and winter of 2020. Local officials say 181 deaths have been attributed to the virus. Today, community health and government leaders came together to mark the 4-year anniversary of the first cases in Kentucky and to dedicate a tree that was planted in the memory of those who died in the months and years since then. The virus was especially hard on the Key family in Danville. Joseph Key lost both his mother and brother, and he was also diagnosed with it. Isolation rules were very difficult then.
It was strenuous. It was hard. You know, I even asked if I could come up there with a suit on and a hazmat suit, if I can just see my brother and mother, you know, before I knew, because they said there was nothing else they could do. You know, I was willing to do my life to just see them one more time. And yeah, it was hard. That's the hardest. Knowing that they died alone, that's the roughest part.
And not just recognizing the lives that were lost, but also the change of life that took place for so many of us in so many different ways that all started 4 years ago. In Boyle County, Phil Pendleton, now back to you.
Key also says he lost several friends to the virus. Williamsburg students are out of school today because of illnesses. The city school district posted on Facebook saying COVID and flu cases are driving up absences. There were no classes or extracurriculars today. Students will also learn remotely tomorrow and Wednesday. Coaches will reach out to students about after-school events on those days. Johnson County schools are taking extra precautions after a threat was posted on social media. The superintendent says a potential school shooting threat was posted Sunday. The Sheriff's Department and Kentucky State Police investigated and found a student's account had been hacked. The person responsible for posting the threat is in custody. The school says there is no danger, but law enforcement were at the middle school today as a precaution. Coming up on First at 4, some helpers are coming back this spring to continue with rebuilding efforts after the 2022 flood.
Plus, moisture is back as early as tomorrow. Your First Alert forecast after this break.